One of the most dangerous things we do as sales leaders is make assumptions. And when we're hiring salespeople or evaluating our sales team, it is very likely that you're making three very dangerous assumptions about the hire or the people that work for you now. And those assumptions could be killing you. This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Welcome to Sales Untraining. Kelly Riggs here. It is your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain as we take a very detailed, specific look at sales training and why it often creates a lot of the problems that exist with our salespeople, resulting in what I call unforced errors, only because of how we go about the training process. This week, we'll take a very deep look at some very dangerous assumptions that we make when we evaluate salespeople, whether we're evaluating a current salesperson or someone we're looking to hire. You know, think about the standard hiring process, the interview. And we get that resume and we take a deep look at that resume, and they've got a very nice history, industry experience, selling experience. In fact, they've actually logged some really good revenue numbers. And so we look at that and we start checking boxes. Top revenue, good salesperson. Industry experience, good salesperson. Really present themselves well, very articulate, answers my questions effectively. Good salesperson. Let's hire them. Yeah, well, how does that work out for you? We've looked in previous episodes at a lot of the problems that exist, the cognitive biases that exist in the hiring process. And without a very standard, rigorous approach to hiring that utilizes an objective assessment as a part of that process, we'll get into trouble. You've done it. I've done it. It's one of the reasons why turnover is so high when it comes to hiring salespeople. Turnover is abysmal in the sales industry, and it's because we're not very good, myself included, early on in my career, not very good at hiring. You know why? One of the reasons is, frankly, we're just hardwired to go fast, to be efficient. We were great salespeople, weren't we? Let me ask you a question. Were you one of the top salespeople in your particular company or organization? And did you get promoted because of that? You would be like, 95% of all sales leaders who got hired and promoted because they were great salespeople. And many times we don't even know what made us great. You might have been process driven, a great planner, and someone who was able to manage pipeline very effectively, or you might be a unicorn. You know, the top 20% of the top 20%, they just have it. Now, we like to use that word born salesperson. It's not really accurate, but some people are far more adept at connecting with people, building relationships. Their EQ is off the charts, and people just like them, and they have some skills to go with that. They articulate a value proposition very effectively, and so forth and so on. You got promoted. You're used to going fast. You've got 12 balls in the air, and you throw them up and you juggle them effectively. And now it's time to hire a salesperson. So we're going to go fast. We look at that resume, gut feel, looks good. They present well. They've got great revenue, great experience. Clearly, they'll be a good salesperson, except no. Many times they are not, and we're left shaking our heads. Why? Because we make assumptions about those people. When we see those boxes checked, top revenue, industry experience, really presents well, must be a good salesperson. Not true. Not true at all. In fact, the thought that they can sell might be true, but will they sell is a completely different set of circumstances. Can sell does not equal will sell. But beyond that, we just make assumptions when we hire someone or when we have someone working for us. We give them a long runway. We believe that they can sell. And that, my friends, is a terrible assumption. You are assuming that someone you hire actually can sell without validation. We've talked at length about how difficult it is to be top 5, top 10%, how tough it is to go out and compete against other viable companies with equally good value propositions. And we're in a competitive arena where we're fighting against other companies to get one trophy. There's no prize for second place. Right? So we have to ensure that our people can sell. And when we're hiring or evaluating, we have to ensure that not only can they sell, but they will. And this is dangerous assumption number one. Oh, past experience, good revenue, top revenue, industry experience, they can sell. Or they're on board. They understand our product line. They know our product very well. They can sell. Absolutely, unequivocally, not guaranteed to be the truth. We have to be able to establish that not only can they sell, i.e., do they have the drive, the motivation, the sales DNA, and the tactical skills to sell, but they will sell. They're willing to go out and compete. They're willing to go out and do the things necessary to be successful. And I will suggest to you that one of the big challenges you may be having as a sales leader is you've made the assumption that they can, but you're not actually sure that they can sell effectively. You've not validated their skills, their habits, their work ethic, their disciplines. None of that's really been evaluated in and of itself to see, do they have the raw material to sell? Very, very dangerous assumption. And as an aside, when we're hiring somebody, we look at those numbers on that resume. Number one, salesperson, increased revenue this much, have this much revenue, top producer. Listen, a good A player is going to put those things on their resume, but don't take them at face value. That's a mistake. Maybe they've been there a very long time and they get all the best leads because they know more about the product line than anyone else. So they're getting all the very good leads, the top quality leads, the major account leads. They'll be funneled to them. That means they don't really have to hunt. So yes, they could be producing top revenue. Doesn't mean they're top sales person. Meanwhile, you've got somebody in the middle of the company that got stuck in a terrible territory, brand new, no support, and they've got to go out and try to create revenue out of whole cloth with no good leads or no marketing support or anything like that, and yet they may be very highly talented. That sounds a little bit like my early career, with the exception that I didn't have the skills. Yeah, I got that territory. My first job as a salesperson, I got hired and trained, and it was very clear, Kelly, if you can't present this product to the owner of the company and the sales team in a manner that we believe will be effective in the field, we can't use you. So 2 weeks in, I have to do a role play in front of an entire group of people, scared out of my mind. I'm a whopping 20 years of age. Somehow or another, I managed to pass that hurdle, and they gave me my territory, which I found out much later was garbage. It was the territory nobody wanted, very industrial, a lot of travel, never been explored, didn't have a lot of existing business. At the same time, because I was ignorant of all those things, I didn't have a mindset that said this can't be done. And I went out and created success in that territory. But you've got to look at each and every salesperson in context. Do not make the assumption that they can sell, even if they're a veteran. Many veterans will shy away from role play because they don't have the confidence in front of customers that they should have, and they're really not good at selling. They're great at information sharing. They're good at talking about their product, but that's not selling. It's certainly not prospecting. All right, which leads me to number two. A dangerous assumption number two is that they will manage a pipeline, and they know how to manage a pipeline, that they understand the gap between their quota or their number for the year, what they're currently producing, and how much prospecting is absolutely necessary to close that gap, how many opportunities they lack. Listen, I ask this question all the time, 18 years of doing what I do now. Do you know what your gap is? And first, typically they go, I'm sorry, what do you mean? What is the gap between what your current pipeline will produce and what your number is? And I usually get a smirk and a smile. We're all good. I go, really? Well, that's fantastic. Explain it to me. And they pull open their CRM and they show me $1 bazillion in opportunities. And my number this year is only $6 million or $8 million or $20 million, whatever it is. So I've got this enormous CRM funnel opportunity and I've got this little bitty number, Kelly, I'm going to make it. Except that when you start to go through the line item by line item in CRM with them, they have to admit that, well, that one's been in there for 10 years and that one's for 4 years and this one is really dead in the water and this one I have no idea what's going on. And finally, when you get it down to their actual pipeline, that you realize that based on their current closing rate, that they're about $4 million or $2 million short of their actual target, and they have no idea how they're going to close that gap. Why? Because they're walking around believing that they have plenty of opportunities in the pipeline to actually hit their number, and you, as a sales leader, are bought into the same assumption. Oh, I assume that A, they know what their gap is, and B, they know how to fill up a pipeline with viable opportunities, high quality, high value opportunities that will enable them to hit their number. Not necessarily true. Is it true sometimes? Sure. But if a salesperson cannot talk to you intelligently about their pipeline and the gap and the opportunities it's going to take to enable them to get there, they have no expectation with any high degree of confidence that they'll hit their number. And that is a terrible, terrible assumption that's being made by you. Yes, it's being made by them as well, and that's bad enough. But as a sales leader, that should be top of mind for you. That's part of our role as sales leaders, to manage that pipeline, to make sure that they have enough viable opportunities to hit their number. Which leads me to big assumption number 3, and this one is absolutely killing you, that they know how to plan and organize and execute effectively on a regular basis to maximize their time and their return on that time investment. My experience is most salespeople are highly reactive by nature. They react to what comes at them. The phone call rings, customer screaming, they go jump off the boat into the ocean and start swimming to get over and take care of that problem. They're very reactive and they don't have a detailed plan for exactly what they're going to do today, this week, this month, the absolute necessary items that have to be completed in order for them to be effective in the field, which relates directly to assumption number 2, the pipeline management problem. Because if they can't plan and organize and prepare for calls effectively, then they are simply subject to whatever gets thrown at them every day. And here's what happens. They finish each day and each week, and they tell you they've been very busy. They've been run over by customer complaints and problems and issues and challenges, and they're much too busy doing quotes and proposals and presentations and everything else to be in front of customers on a regular basis. Listen, if you break down the time of an average salesperson, the amount of time that they even have available to be in front of customers is a fraction of their 40-hour work week, because of all the things that they have to deal with, meetings and travel time and every other thing, the things that we've mentioned, responding to customers and so forth. So the amount of time they have to actually prospect or that they have to manage a pipeline can be very, very small to begin with. Now, no plan, no specific objectives, don't know exactly what I'm doing and why, then what happens is I start to give away a lot of time that I shouldn't. You know, time in the office, time traveling in the field, time at lunch if they take lunch, and some guys don't because they just don't have time. But they don't manage their time well because, you know, everybody says, well, Kelly, what we need is a time management course. We need some training on time management. Yes, you do. You know what it's called? Planning. Planning is what creates time management. You know why? You don't have a time management problem. You have a prioritization problem. is that we're not doing the most important things that are going to drive revenue. 3 very dangerous assumptions that you can be making that you can indeed impact greatly. Well, coming up next, 3 ideas that'll help you manage your way around these 3 dangerous assumptions. Stay with me. I'm Kelly Riggs, host of the Sales Untraining podcast. A couple of quick questions for you. Do you hire salespeople? Is sales turnover far too high in your organization? Do you struggle to find A players for your sales team? Well, these are very common questions, and there is a better way to hire. I'm a partner with Objective Management Group, OMG, and they have been assessing sales candidates for over 30 years. In fact, they've assessed over 2.5 million salespeople. Now, this is a very different type of assessment. First thing out of your mind is it another behavioral assessment? Is it a psychometric tool? Is it a personality quiz? No, nothing like that. It is based on 21 very specific sales competencies. And you need to listen to this. This is crazy. It is 91% predictive of sales performance. That's right, 91% predictive. You can't even make a claim like that without the science behind it. Listen, if you struggle to find the right people, or if you just need a lot more help in the hiring process and making sure you're getting in front of the right people to hire, please email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Oh, by the way, and you can absolutely try it for free, and it has a guarantee. kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Back to the show. Welcome back. Sales Untraining. Hey, listen, I hope you'll take a moment, like and subscribe to the podcast. Share it with another sales leader that you know as we spread the news about ways to really impact performance based on the way we approach sales training. Sadly, we make a lot of unforced errors that lead to a lot of very predictable results, frankly. And so we can avoid a lot of those unforced errors just by changing the things that we do. Today, we talk about 3 really big assumptions that we make that we can't make. First off, you cannot assume that just because someone has a history of revenue or they have a history in the industry itself, that they present themselves really well, that they know how to sell. Doesn't mean they do, doesn't mean that they don't, but your job is to make sure. The first responsibility of any sales leader is to absolutely ensure and confirm that your people know how to do the basics really well. In sports and football, we would call it blocking and tackling. You know, in baseball, it's running and fielding and hitting. We've got to be able to do the basics well. And if not, we've got to practice, you've got to coach, you've got to role play. That's your job as a sales leader. And if people cannot develop those elementary skills, those basic skills, then we just can't use them. You know, people have to be committed to their own development. Are you responsible for their development? Sure. Are they responsible? Absolutely. So it's a shared responsibility. But because they work for you and you're the leader, you've got to create that culture, that environment of learning, not training. Wrong word. We can train all day and people don't learn anything. It doesn't really help us. They have to learn, they have to change, they have to grow. That's the idea, is that our responsibility is to ensure that they can sell. Well, how do you go about doing that? Well, an evaluation is a critical part of that. I simply will not hire salespeople absent a critical skills analysis, an objective evaluation of 21 specific sales competencies. And that particular assessment is available, and yes, I can help you with it, but it's available through Objective Management Group, whom I partner with. But that's only part of it. We've got to learn to interview more effectively. We've got to onboard effectively. And part of that onboarding process is ensuring that they have those skills that we need. You simply can't rely on the old standard interview technique of, look at their resume. Were they a top performer? Did they create good revenue? Do they present well? Do they have industry experience? Does it work? Sure. According to the data, roughly 20% of the time when you're hiring on gut feel. You can improve that a little bit with some other types of assessments that are simply psychometric exams. But listen, when you're hiring, you know what you need to ensure that they are? That they're learners, that they're motivated, that they're driven. If they do not have the desire to sell and the discipline to do what it takes to be successful, you're wasting your time. A lot of capable salespeople go from job to job to job because they're not willing to do what it takes to be successful, to learn the product line, to learn the applications, to learn the industry, to learn how to ask the right questions and engage in dialogue and uncover the motivations for purchasing and so forth and so on. What we do as salespeople is extraordinarily difficult. That's why it pays so much, because we're competing and there's, again, only one prize for a first place, nothing below that. Okay, number one, don't make the assumption. Create the process to assess and analyze your people to ensure that they know how to sell. And if they don't, you've got to become their chief coach and trainer, right? Number two is when we look at what they do in terms of planning, can they plan? Can they create a detailed path to get to their number every year? You've got to take charge of that. Listen, when you're hiring someone, please make it a part of your pre-hire process to say, hey, if we offered you this job, how would you go about developing the territory? I'd like for you to take a minute and put together a one-page plan, and I'm looking for details. How do you go about developing a territory, identifying opportunities, developing those opportunities, et cetera, et cetera? Let's get an inside look at how you approach building your business. Now, prepare to be disappointed, but we're looking for really good effort and a lot of thought into that process. And we can teach and train on how to plan effectively and create a pipeline and do all the things that are necessary to be absolutely effective in that role. If they can't plan and they can't manage that pipeline and those two assumptions are tied together, it really creates a problem. Which leads me to the third thing that you can do, and that is you have to prioritize in your coaching conversations about their pipeline, consistent questions. Now, I'm not talking about micromanaging their day-to-day and what they do, because you'll create a culture that people don't want to be a part of. But asking good questions is not hard when you're doing one-on-one meetings with your salespeople. And that pipeline is their lifeblood. And so I need to find out what they do well, what they don't do well. Do they have a clear understanding of the gap between where they need to be at the end of the year and where they are now and what their projected pipeline will produce? Do they plan and prioritize prospecting time? Okay, set very clear expectations for that. Have them identify a very specific number of opportunities that you will work together to help them develop and pursue. Listen, you've got to take a very active role in overcoming those three assumptions. Make sure they can sell, make sure they understand pipeline and they know how to manage it. And number three, that they have a plan for every week. What exactly is the most important thing that you need to be doing this week to help you get to where you're going? Dangerous assumptions that you don't have to make. I'll see you next time.
Sales Untraining is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.